welcome back to another episode of Authentic Amigas. My name is Valerie.
And I'm Florencia. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Authentic Amigas Podcast. We're happy to have you here another week. We're going to start off with a little icebreaker, a little question to get the juices flowing for all of us in this episode. We're going to start off by picturing, and hopefully if you're listening, do this with us. Picture your most beautiful self. What do they look like? What does that feel like? Let's get specific. What exactly does that look like? We both already did this activity. So go ahead and pause if you need to right now to really think about what does that look like? Your most beautiful self. And we'll go ahead and get into what that looks like for us. When I think of my most beautiful self, it's so funny because I like to think that I haven't peaked yet. You know, I'm only 23. I have the rest of my life ahead of me. And I constantly try to remind myself that the best is definitely yet to come. I'm very young and I got a lot left in me. But I think back to 2019, to the summer of 2019. It was hot girl summer. Pre-COVID, of course. And that summer, actually Val and I together kind of worked on ourselves a lot. I worked on myself a lot that summer and we were on our grind. I mean, it's so funny because when I think of like my most beautiful self physically, I think of myself then, but I was actually also super unhappy at that time in my life. I had like no clue what I was doing. But anyways, we're just talking about physically, my most beautiful self. I was so athletic. I was so in shape at that point in my life. And yeah, I was skinny, you know, I mean, not really skinny compared to like, you know, by a lot of people's standards, which we'll get into. But for me, my skin was glowing. I had clear skin. I was so skinny, whatever. That's what I picture as my most beautiful self is I was super athletic and I was super in shape. I look back at pictures and I feel like I was glowing. So that's what I think of when I think of my most beautiful self. It's actually a previous version of me. Yeah.
Okay. And yes, I do want to add, she was popping. We went to Hawaii that year. She was the baddest on the island. I'm like, she got us into the parties.
No. So, it was definitely a time that I look back to often, you know, and I'm sure you do too, because we were on our grind that summer.
Yeah, no, it was a beautiful time. So when I picture my most beautiful self, and this actually requires a lot for me to say out loud, because it kind of makes me sad. But when I picture my beautiful self, like I don't see her in my past form. Like I don't think I've been her yet. When I picture my most beautiful self, when I picture my most beautiful self, I picture like the person I'm trying to be and the quote unquote like body I'm trying to have. And that kind of makes me sad. That kind of makes me sad because I try really hard to embrace what I have and I do a pretty good job. But if I'm picturing my most beautiful self and I'm being honest with myself, it's not who I am right now and it's not who I was yesterday. It's who I'm trying to still be, which, you know, I think it's important to admit that because I'm so far from perfect and I don't have all of it together. And I think I've heard a lot, like you come off as so confident and like you know, like you love, which I am confident, but that doesn't mean like I don't have days where I don't feel my most beautiful self. So yeah, my most beautiful self, I picture in my head, I picture not even like a specific body type, but like actually, you know what? I'm lying again. I'm not doing that. Yeah, I do picture a specific body, like, and I close my eyes and I'm like, I want to look kind of like I did in 2017, but you know, more of an adult version of her. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't feel like I've been my most beautiful self yet. And we're going to go into the reasons maybe why I might feel like that, honestly. And why maybe some of you listening who, you know, if there's anybody out there who feels the same way, like, why do we feel like this?
Yeah.
Because nothing that we feel is for no reason. There's always a reason why we feel a certain way and we look at things a certain way. So
Yeah.
should we go into what we're going to discuss today?
Yeah, definitely. I guess a follow-up question.
Ooh.
To
I was not
before we
ready for
actually
that.
go into it. No. We don't actually have to answer it right now, but just for all of us thinking. So now that you've pictured your most beautiful self and I've pictured my most beautiful self, how much does it cost to attain that level? You know, for me, I know that it cost me a gym membership, at least a gym membership, whatever the cost of like dermatology treatments, because I was not blessed genetically, hormonally, none of the above with beautiful skin. Well, I mean, I do have beautiful skin, but I mean clear skin, you know, because I'm talking about my most beautiful self.
Mm-hmm.
So at least the cost of that already adds up to a few $100s a month, maybe, potentially. So yeah, just a follow-up question for everybody to think about. So your most beautiful self, and how much does he or she or they, how much do they cost to attain that?
Yeah. Okay. That's a great question.
But yeah, definitely. Just something to think about. Before we get into today's topic more, today we're talking about decolonizing beauty standards. If you haven't checked us out on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok yet, we're at Authentic Amigas everywhere. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or SoundCloud, make sure that you give us a follow. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. And if you're listening but not watching us on YouTube, just know that we have a visual up. You can always check us out here, see our beautiful faces. Ironically, we're talking about beauty today, but see our beautiful faces as they are on YouTube. Make sure to check us out there at Authentic Amigas. Best friend, where can they find you?
You can find me on all my personals at Valerie Pamela, and you can find best friend at Florencia Galvan. Instagram, Twitter, you can find us like that. And you know what? I really wish we can plug in a sponsorship right here. I really wish, you guys, everyone that's listening, one day this will be where we plug in our sponsorship. So just be ready. We're just putting that out there. For now,
in this segment, we'll be like, thank you to our sponsor, ourselves.
Yeah. Period.
Oh, and one last thing before we get even further into it, we are selling Authentic Amigas stickers. And if you're listening, all of the sticker proceeds, 100% through March 7th, 2021, will go towards Women's Day in Skid Row. We're raising funds for that right now. There's definitely more details on Instagram. If y'all are interested, check out at Authentic Amigas, our post on Instagram about that.
Thank you so much.
All that being said, we can keep going into today's topic. Today we're talking about decolonizing beauty standards, and we have a few things that we want to talk about. Firstly, I guess we'll just get right into it.
Okay.
Culture is such a funny thing. I actually saw this TikTok maybe in the last week or so. And it said something about like, oh, like trends cycle through, like every 10 years, like there's a different trend, right? And so they were saying like, and I'm sorry, best friend, we actually didn't talk about this beforehand, before the episode, but
I'm like, you're not reading the script.
No, I know, guys, we always do a little run through of like, you know, what we want to make sure that we talk about before we run an episode, but sometimes things just come to me. So
no, I love it. We love it. Those are the best. Yes, yeah, no, those are the best moments.
Yeah, this is like we're all just sitting on the floor together talking.
We love it. I'm like, go off, best friend. Let the people know what you saw.
So maybe in the last week I saw TikTok and it was talking about how beauty trends cycle through like every 10 years or so. And so they were saying since about like 2013 or so is the year that they gave, the trend has been for like women to have like big thighs, a big butt, whatever. And so they were saying like trends cycle through every 10 years or so. And so they were saying like, what's going to be the next thing, like in the next 2 to 3 years, because we're coming up on 10 years of that, right? So supposedly, according to this theory, something new is coming, and like, what is that going to look like, you know? And I was reading the comments on this TikTok where they were saying like, okay, like the early 2000s were all about like skinny, low-rise jeans, whatever. And now the trend has been thick girls, big thighs, big butt, whatever. A lot of Black cultural influence on trends and beauty standards, but that's a whole other podcast topic that we can talk about another day. But then I was reading the comments and somebody said like, oh, like LOL, like at me being alive through both of these trends and not conforming to either one of them. And I was like, oh my God, that hit me so hard, you know, when the trend was in the early 2000s, like super skinny, small body, no ass, whatever, not conforming to that trend. And then now the trend being like BBLs everywhere, lip fillers, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And not conforming to that either. Mm-hmm. And it kind of stuck with me. And it kind of, I guess, molded what we're talking about today. Mm-hmm. Growing up, what do you remember? What do you remember seeing, like on magazines, billboards, TV, etc.? Like, what did you see growing up and think like, oh my God, that's beautiful?
Right. So growing up, you could not go anywhere out, like any store, drive across any kind of billboard, because all you saw really was like the size 0 model, light skin, blue eyes, very polished, very not me at all, very European beauty standards. And that's what you would see everywhere. They're like, you could not go to the supermarket and like avoid it, because back then, even more so than now, you know, marketing and advertising and all that has drastically changed because of social media. But back then it really was primarily like magazines, and that's how companies would advertise those magazines and billboards. So it was everywhere. You couldn't avoid seeing what was back then the standard of beauty. It was left, right, up, down. It was everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I think of like the early 2000s, and I think of like Paris Hilton. I don't know. I can't name I'm not good at celebrity culture, so I can't name too many celebrities off the top of my head.
Yeah. But I think like Nicole Richie, which
God, Nicole Richie, she's so skinny at that time, remember?
Yeah, no, she was so iconic. There's her, there was Paris Hilton, and then we can name A through Z celebrity. Victoria's Secret models. I mean, that Adriana
Lima.
Yeah, Adriana Lima.
Right. So it was definitely a moment in our lifetimes. I mean, and we're pretty young. We're in our early 20s, both of us. So it was definitely a moment in our lifetimes where we saw Victoria's Secret culture. I also lump Hollister culture in there with it. But honestly, every retailer can fall into this. But for me, the two ones that stick out as big indicators of what beauty standards or what beauty looked like at this point in time, at least in the media, are Victoria's Secret and Hollister. When you think about Hollister,
Abercrombie, right? Abercrombie and Fitch too.
Hand in hand with Hollister, dude. And what I think of right away, like when you say Hollister, they're honestly,
you get triggered. Is there something that triggers
something triggering about it?
Yeah,
a little bit. You know what? It does send me right away into like certain memories of walking in the store. First of all, the ambiance, they did master that pretty well. Honestly, they're masters at their branding in that way. But immediately I'm put in this like dimly lit room that, you know, the smell, the Hollister or the Abercrombie smell. And then I think about like looking on the walls and seeing these like big, like floor to ceiling images of like beautiful white girls and boys, young men and young women models on the beach, because that's like, you know, that's the aesthetic of the brand. Little to no makeup, clear skin, not an under eye bag in sight.
She said cellulite who?
Yeah, flat tummy. You know the type. I don't have to go on.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit in our Growing Up Thick episode. If you haven't seen it, go back several episodes and you can listen there. But all of this just to say that was definitely an era in time that we grew up with.
And that honestly raised us. Like that era really raised us. We came up with that culture, and here we are now going back and breaking it down and seeing why it is we feel the way we feel, and maybe why you guys might be feeling that way too.
Definitely. When we talk about Hollister too, I'll just sidestep a little bit to say like, oh my God, like I remember being little and like low-rise jeans being the only thing that were sold in stores.
Also, you guys, I have to point out that any opportunity that we can to mention low-rise jeans, we will mention.
It's going to be brought up.
We will bring them up because, again, we're talking about the past and traumas and triggers.
And this is a safe space.
Yes, absolutely.
And please raise your hand if you've been personally victimized by low-rise jeans. Oh my God.
Girl, oh my gosh. I don't know if this ever happened to you, best friend, but those back then, they're little like mid-rise, because they didn't have high-waisted jeans back then in Hollister. No way. They're mid-rise jeans. I remember one time I tried pulling, those joints were not, they were low-rise. Literally,
dude, I still have flashbacks, because even if you could get them up, assuming you could get them up and button them and you could buy a pair, as soon as the way I'm built, the way my midsection is set up, the second that I need to move,
done.
It's butt cheeks out. Like, yep. And literally, I'm just thinking of like 8 to 12-year-old me, because really this all kind of started to change around the time that I was like getting into high school is when things started to change. But I just think of like preteen me before high-rise jeans became a thing. The struggle was real. And if you are listening, you remember. Unless you're very young, you remember.
It was, yep. So all this to say, right, we're talking about, and I think most of our listeners, most of you guys know exactly what we're referring to. You know, you guys can close your eyes and visualize all these things as well, because it wasn't up until recently where we were watching these things today, like the Victoria's Secret runway, the Angel Show, whatever that thing is called. I don't know what that junk is called. I mean, I don't want to say junk because I don't want to discredit the good work from the
talent,
models.
Whatever.
Yeah. But, you know, all that bullshit stuff that they used to do, I'm like, I don't want to trash it. But I'm like, but no, in reality, it was.
And the message that it used to send, right?
Yeah.
And still does send, because it's still a very important time in culture and in history, you know? And it's just so funny to think about, like, how we grew up on that, like you said, how it raised us to where we are now.
Right. So how did this happen? Right? Like, how did these beauty standards become these beauty standards, and who established these beauty standards, and who installed it in us, that in order to be beautiful, we had to look this way?
I was doing a little bit of reading right before we started this episode, and I read something that really, really stuck with me, and it just pointed out that a lot of trends and a lot of beauty standards celebrate whiteness and wealth, which is why we asked at the beginning our 2 questions about what does your most beautiful self look like, and how much does it cost, just to kind of make us aware, even like for our own sake, you know, even for Val and I, because we're doing this with you, what we're basing our ideas about ourselves on. I realize that a lot of the times, like our ideas about like our most beautiful selves revolve around not some like objective like rule of like this is beautiful all the time, you know, but around whiteness, you know, and around like European beauty standards. How many times does it even come down to like, have you seen like girls, and we've talked about filters before, 2 episodes ago maybe, but like I've seen a lot of friends on social media who are using like, you know, the filters, and they're like, oh my God, I wish I had blue eyes, because this filter throws blue eyes on you to make you look European. You know, and it's not intentional. We don't think about it and think like, oh, I look European in here, like, and I love that look. That's how deep within us it is. Like the fact that doesn't cross our mind, but that is what it's rooted in. That's the problem. Like that's the problem.
Right. And okay, so going back to the beginning of like me saying like I don't feel my most beautiful self, and I don't think I'm her yet. why is that? And I love that you just mentioned right now that a lot of these things and how we feel and how we perceive certain things are so like deeply rooted in us that we don't realize that the way we look at beauty is rooted in racism,
Right.
right?
It's
Like,
through a lens. It's like we're wearing a pair of glasses that
no,
are tinted by wealth and whiteness.
oh, 100%. Because as much as I really don't want to, like, maybe even say it out loud, if I dig super, super, super deep in, why was it that I was always, and I still continue to chase this image of myself that just simply does not exist? It's never existed. And maybe it won't exist because it really has nothing to do, like I said, like, I don't know what it is, like, why I feel like I'm not my most beautiful self yet. But the more I think about it, the more I realize like I grew around just white women, and like in school, outside of school, and that's all I saw. So what is it that I'm chasing? Am I chasing my most beautiful self rooted on like in racism? Is that what I'm chasing? Because I'm chasing like this smaller body. I'm constantly chasing a smaller body. And if you don't know, a lot of people of color have more curves. We're built different. We're
Yeah.
built with more meat. We really
Fat
do
in
have
different places on our bodies.
in different places. We're really built different. And growing up, and again, go back to the growing up thick episode for more on this. But growing up, that's definitely not what I saw as beautiful and what
Right.
anybody claimed as beautiful back then. So, am I still chasing my most beautiful self? That beautiful self may be rooted in racism. Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
deep down I'm still chasing that. Like young little Val is still looking for that kind of como se dice?
Conformity.
Yeah,
Conformity to the
to
European beauty standard, to the
yeah,
white beauty standard.
to what I was raised by, to
Right.
what I grew up in thinking like this is the only form, like this is what beautiful is. So maybe
Yeah,
that's really
definitely.
what it is.
And it goes beyond like figure, right? It goes beyond like body shape. There's so many things that are
Oh,
related to this. It has to do also with hair, like body hair. It also has to do with skin tone, obviously, but beyond skin tone, like having hyperpigmentation in certain areas of your body,
we're
right?
talking about discoloration. We're talking about if you are a brown girl, you have some brownness in you. You know what we're talking about. Like the
Mhm.
discoloration you get between your thighs and under your armpits because we are like we're built like that. Where it's not overly shaving. Like some people are like it's because you shave too much. Maybe, but I've always had discoloration on my body. I'm brown. I'm
Right,
pink.
definitely.
Yeah, my brownness, will cause that, and it's so natural. It's so natural, and it doesn't make us less beautiful. And I'm saying that right now, and part of me, like a big part of me, believes that, like it really, really does. But again, it's like that image that I'm constantly trying to chase of like, okay, but maybe if like I use this lightening cream, like maybe it'll go away a little bit more, and when I wear like a bathing suit, like you won't be able to see it,
Feel that
and
bad
that
about it.
yeah,
Mhm.
that makes me I don't know, the Victoria's Secret model I saw growing up never had, like her skin tone looking different shades of brown. Like she didn't
Yeah.
have that.
And it's so
Yeah.
funny because on the one hand, like it was done to us because these beauty standards are outside of us. Like we weren't born thinking like I'm ugly or like the way that like my armpits are dark is gross or weird. We're not born with that judgment about ourselves. It's done to us, but at the same time at some point it's done to us on such a deep level that we do it to ourselves.
Hmm.
Um which is tragic. Like I literally right now that you're talking about this, I literally was thinking about like not that long ago, honestly, maybe like 2 years ago. I took this photo one time and I remember I put my phone like on the windowsill somewhere, and I took a selfie and I'm like holding my hair like this, but I'm wearing like a tube top, and I won't point out the photo on here because I'm just not gonna do all that. But I literally remembered not that long ago, adult me face tuning my armpits. Like what? Like what's wrong with me? Like, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with me.
No.
And that's the point that I was missing, you know? And so we do it to ourselves as well. Like, and so now I'm like aware of that, you know, like I'm like, oh shit, I know how I'm gonna photograph.
Yeah.
So let me be careful what I show people. Like we can't be our raw selves because we're ashamed of our raw selves because people have made us ashamed of our raw selves.
Yeah, in a way, these like white beauty standards have filtered the way we present ourselves to the world as women of color, because like you said, even if we don't necessarily use Facetune anymore, like we are very mindful of showing certain parts in our body that are deemed and looked on as poor hygiene or
Right.
or low, you know, like didn't, like we were saying earlier, like she didn't scrub hard enough. She should have scrubbed
Definitely.
a little harder.
It's not even looked at as like, it's not just like gross to us, but like other people may view it as, and even us at some points may view it on ourselves as like you said, poor hygiene, or even like I remember reading one time a study about like people who are like overweight or like obese are looked at as like lazier, and things like that. So we take these like physical traits about ourselves that are a part of us, maybe as a result of certain things like weight or like race, and we make judgments about ourselves based on beauty standards that we are never going to meet the definition of. You know, it's just we exist outside of that definition, you know.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter, and it's used as a sales tactic to like Black and brown women to buy things like lightening creams, hair removal, expensive beauty treatments. Earlier when we talked about like the cost of your most beautiful self, I said like I wasn't blessed with like genetically or hormonally beautiful skin, so of course I'm gonna be paying somebody to give me facials every month or whatever, you know. And so it's used as a sales tactic to us as well, and mostly women, but I'm sure men as well. We're just talking about us right now.
Man, you know what? As we're talking about this, like I didn't know that doing this episode was gonna be it's doing a lot for me right now.
Yeah, like it's kind of like more of a sensitive topic than we thought.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
oh, definitely. My hands are sweating. I again, we kind of, before every episode we sit down and we're like, all right, this is what we're going to talk about, and you know, these are some of the points we want to hit. But I don't know, for some reason right now, as I'm saying it out loud, I am truly realizing that like it, I'm kind of like my mind just because again, best friend, when she asked at the beginning, like, what is your most beautiful self? And I couldn't really describe it. I just couldn't. But the more that we're speaking about it, the more I'm truly realizing, like I just said, that my most beautiful self is what the early 2000s and what I grew up as beautiful like looks like. Like I look like I don't have discoloration in between my thighs. I look like I don't have cellulite on my legs. I look like my armpits aren't as like, you know, like they don't have any pigment to them. They're just clear and whatever. You know, and it looks like I don't have the discoloration around my face where I have it. That's that's what my most beautiful self looks like. And that's not even something that I consider. Like I don't know. I just never really thought of it. So thank you guys for listening to this episode and allowing us honestly to have this platform where we can come in and, you know, share thoughts and ideas and concepts and conversation with you guys. But in a way, like I feel like this episode actually for me is more than what I thought it was going to be. So I'm feeling grateful right now. I just wanted to take a second to say that I'm very grateful for this episode, because once you're aware of something, like it's, you have full control, where you have some kind of control, you regain some kind of power over it.
Right. And awareness has to be like the first part of the conversation, right? That awareness is the first part of the conversation, because then the conversation can go into a place of like, okay, like how do we undo this kind of, which it's going to be like years and years of practice potentially before we really get to a place of like having undone this. Once we have that awareness, we can kind of move into like phase 2 of the conversation, which is like, okay, how do we get to a point of undoing this? And it can be years potentially of like practicing and like awareness to get to a point of like self-acceptance and self-positivity. And so now we said, you know, we started off this episode kind of talking a little bit about the media influence and the culture of when we were kids, mostly like the early 2000s, 2010s even. And so now looking at this and talking about this in 2021, like what's different, right? Obviously, we're here having this conversation, so we got this confidence to talk about this publicly from somewhere, which is already a huge indicator, you know?
So what
I don't
changed?
think, I don't think anybody would be caught dead in 2003 saying like, my armpits are dark, like I just said on here, you know? Nobody would be caught dead doing that, or like they just wouldn't be a part of like mainstream conversation and mainstream culture, you know? Maybe somebody was saying that, but it just wasn't the norm.
Right. So who changed that, and who came in and said like, or made a stance? Because I think for a lot of things that need change, it really just takes one person, one individual with a voice to be like, this isn't right and something has to change. And usually when one person gets the courage to do that, a army of people come behind to support, and it starts a movement. And that's how movements come about. And we were talking about how for the longest time, right, we grew up with this whole Victoria's Secret angel fashion show where you had to starve yourself. And I'm not just saying this like models have said this.
Real shit.
Yeah, they would starve themselves for days, wouldn't eat. The torture that their bodies went through, like the physical torture because of the workouts that they would have to do on no fuel. It sounds like hell, like
torture.
That sounds that's I can't I don't know, I just get the chills just thinking about it. And that's what we grew up looking to for, again, a
validation.
Yes, for validation. And who changed that, and what changed that? And you know what, it's been a decade of strong, fierce women. You know, I don't think it was just one person necessarily in this case that did it. It's been a chain of like a movement that finally like has, I think, is starting to just take over. It's starting to take over this entire generation, and I think generations to come. And I think a big image of that is like Rihanna. You know, we talked about how Rihanna came in, did Savage, but before Savage, she did Fenty Beauty. And for anybody listening out there that doesn't really know beauty that well, or like the makeup industry, back then there was like 5 shades of foundation. There was like 5 ranges, and like 4 of those were white, and then one of them was dark or brown, and there was just no inclusivity at all when it came to shade ranges and skin tones. Right. And even when brands would quote unquote do darker complexions, they would never get the undertones. Oh, so wrong, because a lot of like white people don't understand undertones for brown skin. They just don't.
Yeah. They don't. It just blows my mind because like on the one hand they don't understand it, but then like you can hire Black people to your team to help you, like they won't do that either, like you know. And we talk about this from a makeup perspective just because that's our background, kind of. That's my training, is in makeup. But it applies to a lot of things. The Fenty Beauty moment in makeup history is like, it's a landmark. Like it's a big deal, because what it did was not only like could Black women shop more easily and more comfortably in mainstream cosmetics stores like Sephora through Fenty Beauty, but what it did for the culture was way beyond Fenty. It forced brands to take accountability, and it kind of gave people the sense of like, it's been done, so it's not impossible. Like here I was this whole time thinking that like it was impossible, like it would never be done, but it's been done. So why can't everybody do it? And it made inclusivity a part of the conversation to the point where like a lot of brands were like quote unquote canceled, which I don't want to talk about cancel culture today too much, but a lot of brands were like canceled and forced to take accountability for their discrimination, for their racism, even though it wasn't a part of the conversation before, you know?
Right. It kind of gave them two options. Either you get with it or you get lost and you get left behind. And
do you remember when Jackie Aina did Pull Up or Shut Up?
yes.
That was a moment as well. That was more during like Black Lives Matter during the summer last year, where it was a call on like beauty and cosmetics companies to pull up information about how many Black people they employ in corporate, or to suffer the consequences of having to confront the fact that they aren't doing enough for
and that their whole culture and company is literally rooted in racism as well. And the lack of diversity that there is, and the lack of trying to be diverse.
Right. Just kind of not giving a shit about it. Like, okay, like we know you're telling us now that we could do better, but like we're not going to, you know, that's kind of the message that it sends.
It's so heartbreaking to say that brown and Black women of color were never even like we were never even thought of.
Right. It was just like an afterthought, you know, and like I said, it goes beyond makeup and it goes beyond like Savage Fenty lingerie for women, because I remember even like maybe it must have been like in the last year, remember that Savage Fenty came out like with like boxers and like things for men as well. And that was a huge moment too. So it goes even beyond like women's retail, you know, it extended to even include men, and men who are not built like your Hollister male model in marketing.
And we love to see it. Let's just stop.
Absolutely.
Let's take a moment for all those beautiful men.
A moment of silence to appreciate them.
I'm like, lickable. Yeah, finger licking good.
I'm being too much. But even like other brands come to mind for me as well. Going beyond Savage Fenty, that was a big ripple moment, like butterfly effect moment for the industry, because Rihanna just does that in every industry that she walks into. She does that because she is that bitch. Happy late birthday to you, queen. But it's Pisces season. But before Rihanna, I think about like Aerie. They're a little bit smaller, not as like, you know, talked about of a brand as Savage for sure, or Savage Fenty, the Fenty enterprises. But I think about Aerie because they're one of the first that I can think of hearing like very early on, like being vocal about hiring models that look like normal people.
Yeah, and not retouching the images.
Exactly. That's the first one that I remember. And it's even to go back again, do you remember must have been like Skims came out with their Valentine's Day collection, and then all the photos that came up of like the Kardashian Jenners wearing the Skims lingerie, like the little tiny red like thong or the tiny red G-string. Yeah. Oh my God, that killed me. That killed me because their parts are not built like mine or like a normal person.
Did you see what the collection was called?
No, what was it called?
It was like lingerie for all, like, or for everyone. It had something. No, on God, it literally, the collection was called like something blank for everyone, and I was like, for who? And that is the problem right there. That is the problem, and that is exactly why we're doing this podcast right now, and this is why we're talking about it, because of companies like that put.
I have to laugh.
No, literally, that put and like put this one body image on a pedestal, and in their case they put 4 because they're all copied and pasted, 4 the same body types on a pedestal, and saying like, this is for everybody. Okay, for who? Because
speak for yourself,
right? And young girls look at that, right? We're at a place now where we can go and be like, no, this is wrong. But you know, a young girl can see that and be like, everyone, like everyone looks like that, and I don't.
Yeah.
What is wrong with me?
I have the picture right here. I just want to show really fast my super unprofessional, just holding my phone up to the camera. If you're listening to us, I'm showing the picture of Kendall Jenner. Just Google Kendall Jenner Skims Valentine's Day.
You know what that would cover? You know what that would cover?
Not one coochie lip. Not one. Sorry. I have to say it.
And I'm so glad we have a platform where we get to talk on this. Wow. I'm so glad we do.
I have to say it. I'm so sorry. If you're listening, you relate. I know you do. All right.
Yeah, honestly, I know they do. Really. I'm like, and even the men that are listening, I know they do too, because I already know.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it's companies like that where I don't know if you saw this, best friend, but I actually screenshotted that and posted it on my story. And I was like, I thought we left this in 2000.
Yeah.
Like, I thought we left this energy.
It's like, we're so over it because better has been done. Better has been done. We know that it can be done. And if Kim Kardashian has the team, the money, the knowledge, the resources to produce a product, she should also be able to do the research that should go into it, that should be part of it, and to do the thinking about someone other than herself.
When companies do that, this is just a quick side note, when companies do some stupid thing like that, it just is so obvious to me that they don't have any kind of diversity within their employees. Like, there's no diversity. They're
right, because it didn't just pass through Kim. It passed through
meeting after meeting after
15 to 25 professionals.
Mm-hmm, exactly. When it's a small business where there's one owner, even then it's kind of like, oh, okay. But
could have done better, but it's just you doing this.
Right. But Kim Kardashian has hundreds of people working for her. Hundreds.
And everybody okayed it. Down to the photographer, down to everybody who worked, shame on everybody, because it literally passed through everybody's hands multiple times before approval, a year in advance. And this still happened. I feel if that's how it is, don't make a product then.
No.
Then don't make a product.
Yeah, because we're not doing that anymore. We're honestly, I think, as we wrap up this podcast and this episode, I think really if you could take anything away from this is just to say no. We're no more. We're not allowing that anymore. We're not allowing the lightning creams to market and target us. I don't like cancel culture, but in this case, hell yeah, cancel the whole concept of rubbing lemon on your underarms to lighten them up.
Burn it.
Yeah, no,
and you don't have to give your time or your money to companies that sell this, to borrow Victoria's Secret verbiage, that sell the fantasy. In that way, when there's, at this point in time, it's been done. Companies have shown us that it is possible to include everybody. And we just don't have to settle, ladies. We do not have to settle.
We are the fantasy. I am the fantasy.
I'm a fantasy too.
We are the whole fantasy. You listening are the fantasy. You are
absolutely.
You are the standard of beautiful. Because I am the standard of beautiful, and Flo's the standard of beautiful, and every single one of us has, is beautiful in our own way, which instantly I think should make it a standard, and we should be represented in every single company out there. There should be no excuses anymore at this point, because like best friend said, it's been done. Companies are doing it, and at this point, if you can't do it, maybe you shouldn't be doing it at all.
And if they're not, they're literally saying that they don't care about you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. So,
period.
What an episode. I mean,
I feel like this episode was a roller coaster for me.
It was. Let's go back to the original question best friend asked. She asked,
"What does your most beautiful self look like?"
What does your most beautiful self look like? And leaving this episode, mind you, again, we technically prepped for this episode. And coming into it, I was feeling a certain way. And now leaving this episode, my most beautiful self, I now realize, is rooted in something that I will never be. And something that I don't want to be. I don't want to be, girl, I am brown. I come from beautiful, a line of just cultural, my ancestors are dope as shit. I don't know what my ancestors went through, but I know they went through it. And for me to sit here and be like, but they, for all, I'm just picturing my ancestors right now, just laughing at me and being like, girl, we really went through these wars. We fought these Spaniards. We did the most for you to just be sitting there talking about how you want a size 0 body. What,
yeah.
How you want that lighter skin, girl. I know that they did not go through all that for me to not embrace who I am and embrace my culture and embrace my beauty and embrace all of this, all of this goodness. So my most beautiful self and what that looks like, that's going to change after today. And that's going to change because now I'm aware of where I was before and why I was feeling the way I was feeling. So now my most beautiful self, I want her. I like when I picture my most beautiful self, I just picture her embracing herself, like her curves.
Right. And it's a beautiful thing to still aspire to things. Nothing wrong with, with working towards the body you want, with paying for whatever procedure you want. Like nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with aspirations and for idealizing, like yourself, a version of yourself. But I guess the point of this whole episode is just to be like, all right, like now when I think of like, I wish I looked this way, or I wish my skin was more this way, or I wish my body was laid out more like this, to ask yourself and for me to ask myself more so, am I like this because I want this or because I think that this is best for me? Or do I want this because it's what was like fed to me and it's what I grew up in and it's what, I guess, to paraphrase, like the man told me, like the powerful guy told me I have to be. Like I said, I hate to go back to our growing up thick episode, but we asked ourselves in that, like, do I like the outfit or do I like the body wearing the outfit? When we're looking at models and whatnot. So just same thing to ask that about our beliefs about ourselves. Like, do I want to be like this because I want to be like this, or do I want to be like this because that's what was fed to me?
Yeah. No, and with that, I guess we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, best friend, for doing this episode. I'm telling you, I think this is one of those episodes where I'm taking away so much from this episode. And I feel like this one's going to change the way I move. So thank you for being here. And
thank you for listening. Us and hopefully y'all do this exercise with us. I mean, like I said, we're doing this together. Like we really, really are. We had something planned out for today that was a little bit more organized, I guess. But we like to be, as our name is, authentic. We like to be organic. Like I said, this is like we're all just chilling together. We're sitting on the floor together on a Friday night talking to one another. So So let us know what this did for you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Like we said, it's a journey for all of us together. And that's all I got.
And cheers to breaking. Wait, what was our title again?
Decolonizing beauty standards.
There we go. Cheers.
Many more years of decolonization.
Cheers to that. And it's like you said, it's a journey, and we're in this together.
Well. Thank y'all for listening. And if you haven't checked us out yet on all of our social medias, we're at Authentic Amigas. If you haven't heard our last episode, we had the amazing opportunity to interview Danielle. She is the singer and songwriter behind our intro and outro songs. So make sure that you check out the last episode. Honestly, it was iconic. And that's all I have to say. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. And we will see you very, very soon. We have lots of exciting content coming up. Yes. We may or may not have a guest coming up. But y'all gotta stay tuned. Period. We love you guys. We really, really do. Thank you for being here with us today. Once more, we will never be able to say it enough times. Follow us, like best friend said. And I think that's all we have, right? Yep. Until next week. Bye-bye. Say no to lightning creams. Okay. And